This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 366 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's topic is travel and mental health. I'd like to pay my respects firstly to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast today. This episode on travel and mental health has actually been on my list, kind of planned to come out around this time for months, for several months at least. But the really funny thing is, it is such perfect timing because I just had my own experience that completely reinforced for me the value of travel for my mental health. You can actually read much more about it in the Substack post I published a couple of days ago called How Travel Makes Me Feel More Like Myself. But I'll give you a brief overview before we get started. So it had actually been a while since I've been on a plane or left Australia. Not quite a year, but getting close. And of course, I know this is a very privileged position to be able to say, oh, it's been so long. But of course, usually I travel relatively often for work and for pleasure. But for a bunch of reasons, I hadn't this year. And so when this Bangkok trip came up, I was heading there for a few days to meet up with Vinci from Rise Travel Institute and to be a tiny part of the Tourism Care's Meaningful Travel Summit. Well, as it approached, I was actually super anxious, increasingly anxious as the departure day drew nearer. A bunch of things were going on. I was worried about leaving my kitten for the first time. I was stressed about the work I had to do before I left and how much work I was going to come back to because it's a really, really busy time of my working year. I was, for no apparent reason, even more anxious than I'd been in ages about flying. And just generally, all in all, I thought, this trip was a terrible idea. What am I doing? But, of course, spoiler alert, and probably no surprise in the context of this episode, but this trip was not a terrible idea. It was 100% exactly what I needed. It was a great mental reset. It was a great break away from my normal routine. I had an exciting and a fun time in Bangkok, making new friends and just enjoying the colour and noise of the city. I love Bangkok. I've been quite a few times. I'll continue to return there. And all in all, by the time I was on the plane coming home, I felt like a new woman. And what's even better, I came home to a super busy week, like a really, really busy working week. But this feeling of being just lighter, happier, more present, less anxious has just stayed with me. I feel like Superwoman. And that's all thanks to travel. So, travel has always been good for my mental health and it continues to be. So this episode is great timing and something I really enjoy speaking about. And in today's episode, I speak with three other women who also firmly believe in the value of travel for their mental health. And I'm starting off with Kaila Yu. Kaila's toured the world as a model and with her band, Nylon Pink. She's got a memoir out now about her experiences as an Asian woman in these industries. So basically, she has plenty of fuel for some difficult experiences. And I asked her for her thoughts on the intersection of travel and mental health.
I actually think traveling is so good for mental health. For us in America, where I think the majority of people don't have passports or something. I forgot what the statistic is. And everyone in the world can see the lack of compassion happening in this country right now. I think it would open that door up more if people traveled more and got outside of their cities and bubbles and echo chambers and talked to other people. Because I think for the mental health of traveling, it's just getting out of your situation. It puts you in a different headspace. Different ideas come into your head and you're more open-minded and you're just off the regular beat. So I personally would just recommend traveling as mental health. Yeah. It also for me, I love just journaling on the plane. I don't mind the long plane rides because I'm I can catch up on my reading. I can journal. And I'm a good plane sleeper, luckily, so that also helps.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. But yeah, I think like travel should actually be assigned as mental health for the world.
Yes. My doctor said I had to go on holidays. That would be ideal.
Well, it's like Americans get, like you guys get a lot of holiday. We have very little holiday time. So it's like, even if people wanted to, it's not really a choice, you know? And I think that's like good for the mental health of society.
Yes. Well, absolutely. I mean, I know I used to live in Germany. And in Germany, they have even more annual holidays than we do. So typically 6 weeks, or at least back then.
Wow.
And not only are they allocated those, but it's really sacred that they would always take that leave, because it's seen as like completely obvious to them that you need that time away from work to rest, recuperate, travel. You know, that's just like the done thing. Like here, yeah, we have lots of leave, but there'll be certain people in certain industries where, you know, it's hard to take that leave, or the boss doesn't want you to, or you can only have a week at a time or whatever. Whereas in Germany, it was like super encouraged that you would, of course, take that leave. You know, everybody did it, and it made so much sense.
Yeah, we're still in that kind of like hustle culture in America. I think it's changing now because like Gen Z isn't putting up with like, they have this term called quiet quitting, which is like basically just like working a normal amount. You know, it's like we don't do overtime and we like take our vacations and you can't call me after 5 p.m. kind of thing. But that just like should be normal, but it's not normal.
Have you got any examples from your own experience of like a time when travel really helped your mental health?
Yeah, I talk about this in a chapter in my memoirs. I discovered free diving. And like before that, I had treated my body, kind of objectified it, and also like saw it as a tool. Like, let me force it to diet and exercise and look a certain way. And so I was really disconnected from my body on like not just one specific trip, but to trips where I get underwater. I just feel like, first of all, there's scientific, you know, studies that say salt water is healing. But also for me, and this is scuba diving, like getting underwater, like no one can speak to you for an hour. You're like in this weird alien world where like you're looking at creatures that are like, how the hell? Like, did I know this existed? Yeah, the fact that there's so many creatures underwater that it's just like, it's mind-blowing to me in a way. It just makes me feel like, oh, I'm so small. Like the world is so huge and perfect. And the fact that we haven't even explored the ocean as much as outer space, or whatever that quote is.
Yeah.
So every time I get underwater and I'm scuba diving, I think the mental health, it's just a natural meditation, because you can't actually talk, you know, you can't actually hear anything. And the noise of the bubbles and the breathing is very meditative. So I would actually, yeah, I think they've done studies on scuba diving being healing in some way.
Well, I am too much of a wimp to scuba dive, but I know even just from snorkeling, I can get a feel for just what Kaila means about that quiet, meditative state you can reach being underwater. It's a great idea. My next guest is Heidi Brown, and she starts off by describing her 4 wellness pillars, and they might not be quite what you're expecting.
So I'm a teacher, I'm a law professor, and I tell my students all the time that I have 4 well-being pillars. I am a writer, so writing is one of them. I take boxing lessons. I'm obsessed with the rock band U2, which a lot of my students roll their eyes and they're like, who's U2? Oh, is the lead singer Bon Jovi or Bono? And then the 4th pillar is travel, and mostly solo travel. But as I've become a traveler, I identify as a traveler. I literally just wrote an entire book about travel, my first travel memoir. I realized that on every trip I take, I go through some mental health phases. So I actually wrote a list of them once, of these 8 different phases I go through emotionally when I go on a trip.
Interesting.
And I had to write them down because they're not all positive, right?
Yeah.
And one amazing thing that I discovered is that to have travel be a pillar of well-being, which it is for me, I have to honor the days on my trips that don't go so well. So if you want, I'll just run through what my 8 phases are.
I'm very curious. Yes, please tell me.
So I love to travel. And so the first phase is just kind of the stirring of an idea of where I want to go next. So it's not really an emotion, I guess, but it's a phase where I'm like, I haven't been to that place before. What would that be like to go there? So it's more this kind of intrigue. And then I start booking the trip, and then it's all about the anticipation. So I sometimes feel like the weeks or days or months leading up to a trip are more exciting sometimes than the actual trip.
That's good, yeah.
So the anticipation is sort of a phase that I go through. And then on the day I'm leaving, I am completely invigorated. I am so excited about the suitcase being zipped, and I have this ritual that I do when I go to the airport. I live in New York City, so I actually live really close to a train station. So I take the train to the air train that takes me to John F. Kennedy Airport. Then I get to the destination, and this is my favorite phase. I go through a whole day of just pure awe. I'm just in complete awe. And it could be anywhere. It doesn't matter where I've gone. The first day is always just this sense of complete overwhelm and how I'm so happy that I made it happen. This is the phase that I think is the most interesting, though. It's not as fun as the awe phase. On day 2, I always have an emotional crash. I'm like sad. I'm depressed. I know. But then I realize, oh, wait, no, it's just day 2. And it's because I'm on such a high on day 1 that day 2 is inevitably this huge adrenaline drop for me. And so now I know that that's going to happen. So on shorter trips, I have to bounce back from day 2 faster. But on a longer trip, it's fine. Like day 2, I'll just, take it easier. And then the next kind of phase of the trip is the ebb and flow, where I'm having the awe moments and then the more peaceful moments and the awe moments, the more peaceful moments. Then when it's time for me to get ready to go home, I invented a verb. So
oh, I like that.
So there's, the adjective wistful is when you're kind of longing for something in the past, maybe that you can't recreate. You're wistful. But I actively wist, like in verb form.
I totally get it.
Yeah, like I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to leave this amazing place. I don't want to. I'm all overly dramatic. And I purposely allow myself to whist for like hours. I take all the photos, I write in my journal. And then I go home and I realize I take some time to kind of savor the trip and realize that I've added sort of new layers to my personality or to my resilience or to my ability to bounce back from feeling sad, etc. So that's kind of how I approach the mental health of travel and how travel helps me boost my mental health, because I feel like every trip I learn something and I feel stronger, and I build a track record where I can trust myself that even when things don't go great, I know that the next day or the next achievement that I make happen will make me feel a little bit better.
I love that. I really love that. I think if I look to my typical mental health journey when I travel, it's similar, except that the day or two and day of until I get to the airport, I get massive anxiety. And I'm sure that I've made a mistake to book this trip. I'm usually trying to juggle like someone to take care of animals or a child, or I've, got to cram in some work at the last minute or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God, the world was, something terrible is going to happen while I'm away because I'm being so indulgent to travel. So the day of and the day before, that's absolute massive anxiety. Once I get on the plane, that disappears completely. And then I feel like just, pure joy. But I love that awe on the first day when you get there. 100%. And it doesn't matter. I travel for work sometimes in rural Western Australia, and it could just be a small country town. And I feel exactly the same way as if I have gone to like Tokyo for the first time. It's absolutely, you're not at home and it's different and you've got a lot of anticipation and it's wonderful.
Absolutely. But like you, I also have a little bit of that guilt feeling sometimes on my trips where I feel indulgent. I feel, especially on my solo trips, I feel like, oh my gosh, here I'm experiencing these amazing things. Maybe I should be home working. And then I'm like, no, I created a life where this is part of my life and it's okay. And it's one of my well-being pillars. So I'm just going to roll with it and not feel guilty about it.
That is very sensible. I'm learning so much from this conversation, Heidi. I'm going to take that and say to myself exactly that, because it is one of I've never formalized it, but it is a well-being pillar for me too. I really feel a lot better, and travel has taught me so much and definitely helped me improve my mental health a lot over the years. So yeah, 100%.
Definitely. I feel like especially traveling solo, it's helped me feel better about my mental health, because when I book the trip, I feel like I'm generating freedom, independence. I know I'm going to learn something, because as you said, whether you're in some rural location or some very cosmopolitan location, you're still learning something new. Like you have to learn how to buy groceries at a new location. Or I'm always the person in a foreign grocery store who doesn't understand that you have to buy a bag, or bring a bag. Things aren't going to roll across the conveyor belt until you show them. Yes, the fruit.
And you don't know how to weigh it and put a sticker on or something. Yeah.
Totally. I am always that person trying to figure out the fruit weighing machine, the fruit scale. But to me, travel is like a puzzle that we're constantly having to figure out the different pieces of the puzzle and put them together. And it's different for every location. And if you just keep an open mind and not be afraid to make a mistake, then it really can boost your well-being and mental health. You feel a sense of accomplishment. You feel kind of artistic. You feel, I also feel like it disrupts our regular routine. So we can get bogged down a lot in our regular routine with anxiety and guilt and fear and feeling indulgent. But if you disrupt that and are in a completely new place, your brain, your survival brain kind of takes over. You're like, okay, I have to feed myself today. Where am I going to find my next meal, or how am I going to get from A to B on public transportation? It just disrupts our daily routines that can get us feeling down sometimes.
I loved Heidi's description of her kind of mental journey before, during, and after a trip. And I also especially agree with two of the reasons she mentions for travel being such a positive boost for our mental health. Firstly, because it disrupts our regular routine. That is so important. I noticed that myself recently. And also because it often gives you a sense of accomplishment. You might not kind of think about this explicitly, but I'm sure that you feel it after you've conquered a new public transport system, or you've got your way through a conversation in a language you've been trying to learn. I know that I feel a real sense that I've achieved something, and of course that makes us feel good. So, all very good. My final guest today is Diane Hartmann, and we chat about her trips to Ireland. The first trip to Ireland that she took was her first time leaving the United States, and she travelled on her own as well. A quick content warning, because we briefly discuss depression and suicide.
Well, I've had a lifelong battle with low-grade depression. My father took his own life when I was 10 years old, way back in 1964. He had severe depression, and unfortunately, I've inherited some of that part of him. And so I knew that when I was traveling solo there, that it would be really a benefit for my mental health as well to travel alone, because you can't escape from yourself. And I knew that I had a sense that I was going over there for a reason that was bigger than just going on a vacation. And you have to deal with whatever's bothering you. And the self-talk, especially after the first few days when I was trying to drive, it was like, and there's a lot of this in my book where I'm basically talking to myself and saying, now listen here, Diane, you can either sit here or you can get up and keep driving. And learning to turn it around, to turn the conversation around so that it was more positive. Learning that I could feel the fear and do it anyway, and be able to move forward in that way gave me more self-confidence. And so, it really was beneficial to my mental health. Now, that's not going to be the case for everybody. So, you just have to recognize that, though. And, I had to pace myself. I mentioned how exhausting the driving was. And so, I wasn't I wasn't out driving for 12 hours a day and coming back to the bed and breakfast at night. I just could not do that. And I had a fear of driving at night anyway. Finally, my last trip, I did do some driving at night, but I had to be very careful with that. And it was the first time in my life also, I had been through a painful divorce 6 years before that, my first trip. I was married for 22 years and tried everything. Anyway, the marriage wasn't going to work. And so there was a lot of betrayal there. It was very painful. And so even 6 years after the fact, I was still working through a lot of the anger and the trauma that you just feel. I had 2 daughters that I was in charge of. He had moved to another state. So, there was just a lot of pressure with that too. And I needed to heal. I knew that I needed to heal because, you have to forgive. And most of all, you have to forgive yourself. And that's what I had the hardest time with.
Yes.
Was forgiving myself for staying in the marriage for so long and, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, again, that ties in with the mental health thing. And I really feel like just having that getting that self-confidence that, well, if I can do this, I can do anything kind of thing really did help. So I think travel, period, but especially solo travel is a wonderful thing for your mental health if you're in the condition to do it.
Yeah, Diane also referenced that self-confidence that travel gives you, and she did single out solo travel as being especially good. I totally agree. It's probably the most impactful way to travel if you're thinking about, mental health aspects. You have lots of time to think and only yourself to rely on. So, I think it's pretty powerful. But I do think any kind of travel can have a positive impact on your mental health as well. So, thank you very much for listening to episode 366 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. A big thank you to my guests. Firstly, I chatted with Kaila Yu, and you can find more about Kaila at kailayu.com. And I'll leave a link to Kaila's new memoir, Fetishized, A Reckoning with Yellow Fever, Beauty and Feminism. Thanks also to Heidi Brown. You can find out more about Heidi at heidikristenbrown.com. And a link is also in the show notes for Heidi's memoir, The Map I Draw, a memoir of travel as a passport to self. And lastly, I chatted with Diane Hartmann. More about Diane at dianehartmannauthor.com, plus a link to Diane's book, her memoir she referenced in our chat, Getting Lost on My Way, Self-Discovery on Ireland's Back Roads. I will also leave a link to my Substack post, How Travel Makes Me Feel More Like Myself. Or if you want to make sure you don't miss out, just sign up to the Substack, thoughtfultravel.substack.com. There are 2 versions. There's a free version where you get the full version of every second post and a taster of the others, and the paid version if you want to support the podcast and me, where you get all of the content in full. And a huge thank you to my Substack subscribers, because it is really lovely to feel that financial support as well. So thank you very much. Also, don't forget, we have Facebook and LinkedIn groups for thoughtful travellers. Links are in the show notes for those as well. For this episode, the show notes are at notaballerina.com/366. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.